I'm gonna give us some breaking news, some coach pundit breaking news
Love
here.
it. Live. Love it.
I'll give the worst one last. First thing, they're both bad. Haroon Zerno is receiving interest from both Miami and Maryland. That's from Joe Tipton. So that came out 25 minutes ago. So that means Zerno's team is,
Poking around, yeah.
resituating, and they're going to open up the recruitment, I would guess. And the second thing being 10 times worse, opening up Twitter, seeing the first tweet from Malik A. Renew that he will be entering the portal.
Oh,
It's okay. It's
oh.
okay. No, it's okay because it's it would be irresponsible of them to not at least see what's out there. But yeah, that
Yeah,
one
but
hurt.
most kids say that they're still considering the school that they're entering the portal from. This was not. Also, he called it the University of Indiana, which is like Malik.
So on brand. So
It's
on
just
brand
like Malik, brother. Come on, dude. But no, that still ruins. That's still kind of that makes me
Ouch.
sad. I'm a Malik
Yeah, that's
Renew
tough.
guy. I'm a
Yeah,
Malik
I'm
Renew
still
guy through and through. Biggest smile on the team. Always played hard, even when he was stupid.
my big man averaging 16 and 10 doesn't even know where he is necessarily,
It's impressive.
know?
That's why I wanted to see him with a new staff. I hope that he considers, but we're gonna have a lot of teams going after these kids. So
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
we should be
there
hesitant to assume
the
returners.
reality check I think that a lot of people are gonna have is that because of a lot of the fan treatment, there are going to be a lot of kids. And I'm not saying that's the case for Malik Renew or for Zorno or for anybody who chooses to enter the portal, but it's a very real possibility that they're just so soured on the place that like you can't even look at the jersey the same way. And that's an unfortunate reality of having people that are willing to DM players and say hateful things. And it's like there's not no consequences to these things. Like there's only so much human beings can take before they just say
Yeah.
they don't want to be here anymore. And it's like you
And
can
is
pay
it
them as much like he's gonna find comparable money in the portal.
exactly?
Like it's not a money thing for these guys.
And it's not just an IU thing, right? Like people want to act like, oh, when you say that, you're saying that, oh, Indiana's different from Kentucky or Kansas or all these other crazy fan
No,
bases.
it's literally
It's
bad
not.
everywhere. That's the
It's
point.
exactly,
It's
but
like it's
those
not
teams have been relevant. We haven't. So we can't afford to be the old Dusty Banner fan base that also racially and mentally abuse their players
Yeah.
and coaches. Like we just can't. No one can, but we definitely can't. Like so seeing, Balo's comments, and I'm sure we were going to get to this at some point, so I'm just going to talk about it now. Seeing
yeah,
Balo's
no, we're here.
comments,
Oh yeah, we're here.
it, it didn't just like anger me. It really just, at this point, we're too far gone. A lot of these fans, and that's okay. I get it. I love IU ball. I've loved IU ball for 25 years. Um, there are lines that are being argued right now that shouldn't be argued, right? There are dozens, thousands even of people like saying that, oh, well, Woodson's making up the threats. Oh, well, Malik's making up the threats. Oh, well, Balo's making up the threats. Oh, well, Trace is making up the threats. Like, these kids aren't lying. So you feel bad for them because they know you're not going to feel bad for them either way. They know
Yeah,
that. You haven't felt bad for them once. So why would they assume that, like, oh, I'm going to go lie about this and they're actually going to feel for me? No, they're telling you their experience because they want you to change. Balo literally said, I just hope that these people change because we are playing to win for them. We are trying to win for them. And that's coming from a guy who spent time at two major programs and found success and watched success and experienced success. And that's his call out,
Yeah, he's been there 8
right?
months,
8 months, and that's his call out. And
it's not
you
funny.
know,
It really isn't
it's
funny.
it's just not
Like
a good look.
it's a
It's not a good
terrible look.
look. Everyone talks. Everyone talks. And we had people in the fan base treat Yogi shitty when he was here the first year. We had people in the fan base treat Romeo shitty the whole time and still do. We had people in the fan base treat Trace shitty. We had people in the fan base obviously treat X shitty. Like there's been a lot of contentious relationships fan to player relationships, group of fans to player.
Mbako, another one.
Yeah,
Mbako,
Mbako, another one.
Malik, Kalel, all
Like
these
it, and
guys.
it's different from just like critiquing their game. Like I want to
And
clarify that.
that's
It's like
exactly, and
it's
that's
not
good
it's not like you're
fun.
like,
That's
hey, like
fair.
focus on defense. Like you are just saying hurtful things to these kids.
Oh,
Like
these kids
it
are fucking like calling like everyone would just always respond when I would tweet about Ball, like he's fat and out of shape and he's lazy. And it's like if you watch that kid play the last
he's
basically
the only guy
since the
trying. He's the only
suspension,
guy trying for the whole year, to be
he
honest.
worked his ass off, man.
Yeah.
Every play he worked his ass off, especially after that suspension or
Yeah.
that one game takeout when he was at stairs getting some
Yeah. That was a
AMF.
bad look. That was like his only slip up all year. But besides
Bad
that,
look.
when he was on the floor,
Bad
he was
look.
playing hard. He was playing hard when he was on the floor. I will say
It was
that.
a bad look with an asterisk. Dope. Undoubtedly dope. Objectively, like, yeah, that's fire. Way sicker than seeing Galloway at the tables at 3
Yeah,
a.m.
that
or
was
whatever.
tough.
Like
That was
that was
that
like,
was tough.
yeah, you're staying in the hotel that all the fans are staying in. Go to your fucking room, Trey. But I think I think it is a big thing to think about. I also think that kids are young and naive and like, they're not gonna like totally be like, "Oh, we don't want to go play there because we heard this and that." Most kids, but their families, right? Specifically like, you know, different types of families that let's say they're not used to the Bloomington, Indiana setting. They're from a city, they're from, West Coast, they're from the South, and Bloomington isn't what you think it is if you're not, like, familiar with it, right? You're like, "Oh, it's in the middle of Indiana, like, how
It's so
different
hard
could
to
it be?"
describe to people. It's so hard.
But it's like a true, like, beacon of light in a city or in a state of darkness, and that's coming from someone who has a bunch of family in Indiana, lived in Indiana, okay, but,
I call
Bloomington is
Bloomington an
different.
oasis.
It is. It's different, and the terrain is different, right? The vibes are different. The people are very different in Bloomington than most other towns in Indiana, and so there is some sort of a barrier, right, geographically, because like there are people that are going to be hesitant to go send their kids to do that, and one thing to point to is like the treatment of Bryson Tucker this year. Obviously, like I even got frustrated with the kid because his dad was too involved allegedly and said
Mm,
something to Woody, and Woody said, "Yeah, grab some pine," which I don't have a problem with.
it's
But
great
Bryson
coaching.
Tucker, yeah, exactly. That's what you say to that. But Bryson Tucker having to, call out Rab Johns, his dad having to get involved. That's a kid who was in those circuits. That's a kid who was in those G League Ignite circles, right? Good recruits, five-star recruits, they know Bryson Tucker. And if Bryson Tucker happens to leave Bloomington and his whole story is, yeah, my 8 months in Bloomington are my coach receiving death threats, then getting fired in the middle of the season, but being forced to coach out the remainder of the season while the fans still shit on him. Our best players getting told to kill themselves and hoping their family kills themselves like the person told Miles Rice that won. Like these are stories that aren't gonna stay tight-lipped with these kids. Because why would they? If their friends are like, "Yo, like, how was IU? Blah, blah, blah," no matter who the coach is. So, you know, it's
Yeah,
it's
I
not
think
fun
I
to
think it's
talk
I think it's
about.
an important call out that these fans really forget is that these players all know each other. Like, it's not like they're
Yeah,
like are
just
like
because 'cause they're
strangers. Like it's not like they're
exactly.
like, oh, that's the kid that plays on Iowa. Like, oh no, I know like half the kids on Iowa. Like that's how it is
Exactly.
because they all played against each other. What AAU is now like a national circuit. These kids know everyone, and it's all about the brand reputation at the end of the day, and the fans. Like, God bless the IU recruiting staff, like having to go through that hurdle year in and year out for what sounds like over a decade
Yeah.
plus
No,
decades.
it's
What it
2
sounds like, yeah,
decades.
it's
It
so
goes
bad.
back I mean, it goes back to Davis, right? Like,
Yeah,
post PB, post Bobby, right? Anything post Bobby in this program has been tough to come by in terms of temperament, in terms of, entitlement. And I don't want to sound like I'm just ragging on the fans because I do believe we have some of the best fans in the whole country.
3 of them right
Um,
here.
exactly. I'm looking at three good, true fans, the true fans. And I think that, yeah, I think it's a minority, right? That's the loud and toxic bunch. But I do think it's gotten enlarged because of platforms like Rab Johns and like the Hysterics that have kind of found a way to shift the narrative towards what they want it to believe or to be. And um, I think people are starting to come to their senses, at least with Rab Johns. I hope people come to their senses with the Hysterics. They're like the fucking Logan and Jake Paul of Indiana athletics, just grifting off of our fan base, feeding them bullshit content and bullshit manipulative ideas. And they take it and run because they look at these guys as like, oh, well, they interviewed Mackenzie Holmes. They interviewed Alberto Mendoza. They interviewed all these different guys. They must be liked. And clearly there's some directive from the athletic department that the Hoosier Hysterics are going to get their play in terms of media coverage. And that is one of the biggest things with Dolson. You got to lock this shit up. You got to lock this shit up. I know Ant Wright said it on his
I saw
live,
that.
and
He went like
that was
in for
hilarious.
he went in for real for like
he
actually
was
like saying it
preaching,
like not
bro.
in text anymore. Like he
And
got
that's a guy who has nothing to do with the
with
Indiana
Indiana.
program.
Yeah.
That's an outsider perspective who, oh, by the way, played under John Beeline at Michigan, has been in the Big Ten, grew up in the DMV, went to Oak Hill, right? Like that's a dude who's
Yeah.
been in basketball circles his whole entire life in the Big Ten for the better part of 20 years. And that's his take. Something so animated as that, like it
Something so
says something.
niche within the Indiana program too. Like if you're outside the Indiana program, you shouldn't really know who those guys are yet. Ant
It's
does,
funny because
and
people
for
do now.
the right reasons in the way that it's in a bad light.
Yeah, the
And
only reason people know who they are is because, like, I know all the Illinois and like Purdue fans will joke about it on Twitter. They're like, I literally got freaking duped by this Purdue account earlier that changed their name to Hoosier Hysterics in their prof and posted like, "Congrats, our first episode is releasing tomorrow with Darian DeVries," and it's like these guys did not just get a fucking interview within minutes. Like I had to do a double take. Thank God, fell for an award. I did,
Yeah,
but
you got
but you
sent
didn't
out.
you didn't actually fall for it. You did the double take. You're good.
You
I
got
caught
you got sent
myself.
you
Yeah,
got
you're
sent
good.
out. No, I
Exactly, I
think
got sent held.
it's funny that you said the true fans thing as a joke, but then that kind of like Dolson needs to be the one to limit the access because the most frustrating part, and I wrote about this, is that when the access was cut, it wasn't just like here's the athletic department saying like we're not allowing any more access to sources that are going to be detrimental to our programs, plural. It was Mike Woodson doesn't want you here. I made this decision. It's on me. And that just like instead of taking the brunt as the department, then it's like who do you blame? Do you blame? Don't then
Yeah.
it's like okay, no, there was one person who made the call to drive the wedge even farther. Whether you agree with that call or you don't agree with that call, whichever line, like side of that line you're on, it's like from that comment on is kind of how we ended up here. So it's like the access definitely needs to be restricted because it's not an accident that we all feel this way. Like they've been detrimental to the program, but it has to come from the right place. Like it has to come from the top.
There needs to be a clause in DeVries' contract that says minimal to no relationship with the Hoosier Hysterics. Those guys are literally COVID. Like, just get away from me. Put a mask on and get away from me because you're going to make me sick. And, they're not good for the program because they exist to do one thing and one thing only: get clicks and get engagement. They are not doing it because they love the program. They've shown that time and time again. I remember Eric Henkowski, the dickhead bald one. He ran to be on the Indiana board of executors or whatever you call it, executive board. He ran to be on that. I remember when he did that. His goal, they want power with it. I'm not saying like that in like like they want to be like in the athletic department, but his motives, they're not pure. They're not out of like the assembly call guys. I've given those guys flock over the last year, but they actually do it because they like ball and they like the Hoosier ball, and they're not making much coin off it or anything. And they've been doing it 50. I've been listening to those guys for over a decade at this point, and they have pure intentions, right? Like they're just trying to cover the ball team that they like. Did I disagree with them sometimes on some of their takes? 100%. But
That's the
these
point.
guys, yeah, these guys, and it sucks that they have the access that they do too, because it's like when Fernando Mendoza commits, why is like the first thing that we're hearing from that kid in relation to IU that podcast? Like if you're the athletic department, if you're the IU football media team, it makes no sense. So there has to be some sort of agreement. And I'm not saying like legal agreement,
Yeah.
but there's some sort of relationship there, and it,
No,
it
100%.
baffles me.
How is he not like? Obviously, they can't do a press conference because he's in college. So like, how do you well introduce him to the fan base is probably what they're trying to figure out. Why is that the Hoosier Hysterics? Why is that not? Obviously, Miller Kop's kind of busy right now. Like,
Well, they got the Hoosiers
why couldn't they
Connect
bring in
podcast.
ex Johnson, like bring in a former athlete to have Trey
Yeah,
Galloway interview him? Like, fuck it, like who, like do
they have the
something like
Hoosiers
within the
Connect
program
podcast.
that's not like guys tied to the program talking to him, not just these random guys that I don't know.
That are also divisive, right?
Yeah,
Like we want to talk
with
about
a
everyone's
pass,
like
like the
exactly.
controversial guys, like they're the controversial podcast. They're not. I don't think they're like the main thing
Yeah, they're
everyone's
not like
looking for.
C-SPAN or like
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. They're Fox News.
PBS.
They're not fucking PBS. They're
that's my
Fox
point. They're not
News
like I don't want to say they don't have credibility or anything like
or
that. They obviously have
CNN.
ties to the program, but they're just clearly, they're trouble is what I'll say.
They're trouble, and
And everyone knows it.
they have a massive
Everyone knows it.
mouthpiece, bro. They have a massive mouthpiece and a massive leash. I don't care what went on between them and Woodson. The fact that that shit came out the way it did, so they could get a bunch of listens on their pod, and people would hate listen, and I don't even care if it's true, which I still don't even think all of it's true. And even if it is, who are these guys to think they're more important than what the coach is saying? Like, is that not a big tell to the fact that they had an in-season argument with our coach, and then he literally wanted to tell them face to face to fuck off, and then they tried to spin that into a cowardly thing? It's like, hey, that's baller. That's one of the best things that Mike Woodson gave us, is the fact that he just big dick those guys, because they think they're part of the program. They think they're a part of this athletic department.
They think they have say in
They
like
think
what
they
goes
have
on.
pull and say, and to some extent they do,
No,
because
you
they
have
have sway
access.
over the
It's very,
fans.
very different from say and
Exactly.
pull. You have
They have
Well,
access.
say
no,
over the
That
they
they
say
comes
had
over
a
with
the
legitimate
fans.
pull.
responsibility that they don't
No,
appreciate
They
the
they have
hosted
responsibility that comes with it.
they hosted an
yeah,
event that
exactly.
raised money for NIL. They were literally specifically my biggest problem with the Hysterics was the fact that they were publicly threatening to withhold NIL funds if something didn't happen at the head coaching position. Like that's and that's like that's insane. And that
Yeah.
was my biggest issue with them is like you're supposed to be for the program, and the program is run by Mike Woodson. And so it's like to be like, we don't like the decision, so screw you. And to do it, not only like do what you got to do behind closed doors, whatever business push pull. I don't know what those conversations are like,
How much
but to turn
NIL are
around
they
and
raking in?
No,
regardless of
they're
30K?
what it
I don't think
is, like
Dawson should
to
give a
go
shit about their
public
30K they're bringing in.
but to go public like that and to hold it over like we
Yeah.
have the power of the people and can take your job from you, like cancel culture is like
yeah.
that was
And
insane to me.
they aired out a bunch of nonsense, right? Like they aired out a bunch of shit like that, Eric got Woody's daughter a job, and they made it personal, and it shouldn't be personal, right? I don't care how many fans listen to what you say or listen to your podcast, you are a symptom of the program. You are not the program. You're not like you are a sickness that is attached to the program. You are not the body, right? The body is these kids, the staff, and the AD, the athletic department.
Nailed it.
That
And
is the
Pam Whitten.
body. And Pam Whitten.
Shout out to Pam.
Shout out Pam.
Pam, you should be paid less.
No.
That's
Pam,
That's not what we're
that's
debating
another
about. We're
story.
not
But
here to debate Pam Whitten's contract.
doing that right
yeah,
now.
we're here to toss some snuff on the Hysterics name, and I mean it's obvious that those guys suck. Most
No,
people
I do
aren't.
want to move the conversation past the Hysterics, though.
I do too. Last thought on the Hysterics. Put the clause in the contract, Scott. Put the clause in the contract. No to minimal. Like Ant said, you keep them at arm's distance if you have to keep them anywhere at all, but you can't let those guys get near our players. You can't, because they validate them. The people look at them and they're like, oh, well, Malik got on the podcast. That must mean he likes them. And they're just there to fucking get paid. They don't like them. But people are never going to understand that.